Entrepreneurship will come to order. I want to thank all of you for being here. I extend a welcome to our witnesses. We'll introduce them in a moment. I'm very happy that we're going to be holding today's hearing titled Small Business and the American Worker. And the hope is to explore the ties between the health and dynamism of small business and the well-being of American workers. For far too long, in my opinion, policymakers have focused almost exclusively on consumer welfare. We paid very little attention in public policy to the welfare of workers. The idea that any type of economic efficiency is beneficial so long as those left behind can rely on some sort of government safety net overlooks the fundamental role of the dignity of work. It is through dignified labor and dignified pay for that labor that American workers create the stability and the vitality of families, communities, and country. Yes, of course we want to see strong economic growth, but we want strong economic growth that creates good and dignified jobs, not just good statistics. You need both. It's instructive to note that as GDP has risen from roughly $2.6 trillion in 1979 to almost $21 trillion in the last quarter of last year, the percentage of means-tested government transfers to middle-income recipients has more than doubled, according to a study by the Brookings Institution. It tells us that a broad swath of Americans, despite all this growth, have been left behind. This is evident in our stagnant labor force participation rates and falling annual incomes of high school-educated workers. It is evident in the precipitous decline in community life and engagement with the institutions that are critical to a thriving society. Americans now find themselves feeling more disconnected and alone than ever before. We are not powerless to act. It is incumbent upon us to find innovative policy solutions that empower a broad range of American workers and place the vitality of the labor market at the forefront of our decision-making. In doing so, we must not disregard the power of free markets and competition as an engine of economic growth. It is the most powerful engine of economic growth man has ever known. But as this committee heard from a panel of witnesses last week, our failure to respond to Made in China 2025 and other foreign industrial policies diminishes our core productive capabilities and eliminated the livelihoods of thousands of small business manufacturers and millions of American workers. There was once a notion in this country that if you work hard and you put your mind to it, you could support a family and buy a car and a home and live the American dream. It is unrealistic to believe that this social contract can be replaced by a check from the government. Our country cannot have the sustained benefits of economic growth without a strong, productive sector which increases social mobility, advances small business dynamism, and strengthens our nation's overall productive capacity. At the core of this reorientation must be a policy framework that encourages businesses to invest in physical capital as well as their workers' skills and their workers' productivity. Long-term growth also requires investment from government in infrastructure, education, and research and development, as well as a commitment to aligning regulation with labor market needs. Such investment should take the form of a national innovation strategy, which will enable small businesses to modernize and compete on a global scale, as the committee discussed last week. In working towards this strategy, this committee will focus on orienting the programs within the Small Business Administration to foster greater innovation and small business growth. Strengthening America's labor markets also entails a focused effort to improve the conditions under which this market operates. Harmful artificial restrictions, such as burdensome occupational licensing and one-sided non-compete agreements for low skill and entry-level employment, those things impede worker mobility and choice. These obstructions to work are most acutely felt by Americans with fewer job opportunities, and they must be removed. In addition, policymakers have often overlooked the fundamental role of the family and non-governmental social institutions and the vitality of our labor market and country as a whole. I fought personally to reduce the tax burden on middle-income families and foster an economic environment conducive to family formation and prosperity through efforts such as increasing the child tax credit. We need to consider policies which allow for flexibility in training and work. One such idea is a federal program to enable parental leave, such as the one I've introduced last Congress, and ideas that others, including members of this committee, are working on separate bills that would do the same. Under this plan, workers would be empowered to engage in family life without sacrificing their ability to make ends meet in a way that balances fiscal priorities and the needs of employers. Ultimately, for the sake of our nation's long-term success, it is the responsibility of our government to emphasize dignified work in a production-focused economy. And so I look forward to today's discussion that will explore policy solutions to America's labor market challenges, in particular as it relates to small businesses in this country. And now I turn it over to Ranking Member Cardin.